Our next speaker, Elijah Brooks. Billy, Elijah Brooks.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and honored guests, if you've ever been behind the wheel of a vehicle, this one's for you. 5 years ago, I lost a very close friend of mine. When I found out that he died, I began thinking back to some of the adventures we'd shared. One trip in particular stood out. Bill had hitchhiked all the way from Houston from Florida out to Houston, Texas, where I'd spent the summer earning college tuition money. From Houston, the two of us would then hitchhike on out west, eventually making it as far as the Grand Canyon, which we would cross on a 3-day hike. That's not the part of that trip that I thought about first, though. The part my mind jumped to first was this one particular ride we'd gotten heading west across Texas. We're on the side of this 2-lane road with our thumbs out when this shiny new pickup stops to gather us in. The driver is sitting there with a 40-ounce bottle of beer perched between his legs, obviously inebriated, but I'm young and stupid, so I get into the truck instead of insisting to Billy that we don't ride with this nitwit. Riding along, we're soon hearing all about our hero's macho exploits. Meanwhile, even though the guy barely touches his beer, he seems to be getting more and more sloshed and driving more and more erratically with every passing mile. At one point, he intentionally, maliciously runs a car with a couple and their 2 children right off the road while passing them. I'm telling Bill, man, this guy's gonna kill somebody. We gotta get out of this truck. Bill insists I just sit tight. Everything will be all right. Along the way, we pick up another hitchhiker. By now, I have such a visceral revulsion for this drunken bozo that I volunteer to sit in the truck's bed just to get away from him. Bad idea. We're soon weaving down the ever more winding road with me in the back hanging on for dear life. While I'm sitting there looking back, at one point in the distance, I see this semi-tractor trailer closing in from behind. Right out of the movies. Brand new shiny white cab with this huge pair of Longhorns bolted on the hood. Semi catches up with us. The driver's sporting a Texas-style 10-gallon hat, and apparently he's in a hurry. Driver flashes his headlights, honks his horn to get our guy to let him go by. Our boy won't let him pass. In fact, he actively swerves to keep the guy from being able to pass us. Soon at the end of his tether and seeing the least opportunity, and I do mean least, Mr. Cowboy floors it and finally begins to pull around us. He just gets his cab past us before swinging back into our lane, running us completely off the road with his trailer. I was sure we were going to flip. Somehow or other, our chauffeur, in spite of his increasingly pickled state, is able to maintain control and steer us back up onto the pavement. By now, I'm thinking, that's enough for me. I'm getting off this thrill ride. I start pounding on the back window, screaming for the guy to stop the truck and let me the hell out, all of which has absolutely no impact on our host. Meanwhile, things are rapidly going from bad to worse. Seems we're now headed up this long hill, at the top of which is a car loaded with children, with its turn signal on, stopped and turning left. I'm thinking, what's the stupidest thing this moron could possibly think of to do? Obviously, he decides to pass on the left. Gee, why is that a bad idea? We crest the hill in the oncoming lane with a car barreling down on us at highway speed. At which point, our driver conveniently passes out. I am not making this up. Passes out. The only thing that saves us is that the new hitchhiker sitting in the middle is able to get his foot on the brake, his hands on the steering wheel, and somehow or other to magically steer us through all of this without hitting anything. By the time it's all over, all 3 vehicles are in the ditches on either side of the road. I jump out of the back of that truck. I am hopping mad. Bill, on the other hand, is laughing like this is just the funniest thing he's ever experienced, which just makes me angrier still that he can find this all so amusing. In retrospect, I'm sure it was nervous laughter. This gentleman could have killed us and a whole lot of other innocent people that day. That trip took place in the summer of 1970. From 1970 until today, there have been upwards of 800,000 alcohol-related traffic fatalities in the United States. 800,000. 800,000 funerals in a wake of uncounted shattered lives and irredeemable loss, all because somebody made the decision to drive drunk. I'm going to put a human face on that number for you and hope that none of you ever have to add one of your own. Bill was one of the brightest, most beautiful, most adorable souls it has ever been my joy to know in this life. I loved him with all my heart, and I miss him. He'd gone on to get his PhD in plant pathology at Duke University and was a tenured professor at Auburn State in Alabama. He still had miles to go and gifts to bring to this world. He left behind a wife, 3 children, and 5 grandchildren. He was killed April 22nd, 2005, in a head-on collision with a drunk driver who crossed the line into his lane. Mr. Toastmaster.